Okay, good afternoon. My name is Sheldon Gibbs, student number 00010783. And today I am presenting as the Managing Director of GSAFE. And my presentation today will be based on evacuation procedures. Right? So I'll be using my PowerPoint, which I will be sharing now. And as it states, evacuation procedures. The objectives that we will be discussing today will be based on the purpose of an evacuation plan, understand the legal requirements, which gives the plan or gives the need for evacuation plan, the procedure by which we must follow in order for the plan to be effective, and other delegated aspects that are related to the plan or the activity itself. So what is the purpose of an evacuation plan? An evacuation plan or procedure allows persons to leave from a building or from the premises or wherever it is, whether it be a school, a church, your home, to leave this facility to go to a place of comparative or ultimate safety in the event of an emergency situation. So the plan is really to ensure that we relieve panic, that we eliminate panic, and we follow this procedure, which after sufficient practice will become so comfortable, we must become so comfortable that we no longer are flustered in an emergency situation. Even though this may sound kind of far-fetched, however, with sufficient practice of the procedure or the plan, it eliminates the panic level and allows for persons to vacate this building to a place of ultimate safety, as I said before, in the easiest possible way, avoiding all forms of panic. The legal requirement is normally based on legislation relative to Trinidad and Tobago, and in this case, we'll be using aspects of the OSH Act. Now, under the OSH Act 13A, it allows for persons or owners and occupiers to do an annual risk assessment, which identifies all the risks to health and safety for persons that are under the employ or working within this building, or students working in a school, wherever the occupancy may be, and the persons who may be related to or directly not part of the employment of the business, but who are affiliated in the general area or visitors, to allow for all the risks and health and safety that they may be exposed to. So that is part of that process. While doing that, it will allow for understanding how are we to treat with an evacuation procedure if we need to. Under Section 6 of the Act, it identifies that employers must ensure that safety, health, and welfare at work is provided to all its employees. And under subsection 2E, the employer shall maintain means of access and egress. So we discuss why it is important that this evacuation procedure be known to all. Under Part 5 of the OSH Act, which deals with fire, Section 28, persons where there may be more than 25 persons and above, or where persons work above the ground floor, or where there may be situations of explosive or flammable materials being stored, the employees must be familiar with the means of escape, their use, and the routine to be followed. These drills or these records, these are situations must be recorded, and there must be some level of recording of the drills of themselves, which must be kept and presented on demand for inspection of the fire authority. As GSAFE, we recommend in some facilities that we do evacuation drill probably twice a year, and others where there are more risks, we change that to probably once per quarter. Under Part 13, Section 75 of the Act, it also makes mention that these registers or records must be kept in pursuance of this Act and shall be preserved for at least 5 years. So again, this is for the purpose of auditing, that you must have these records kept to show in the event of any eventuality that you have been performing these activities in a timely manner, and that your employees are well aware of the situation in terms of your evacuation procedure. So what is an evacuation procedure? In an event of somebody, an employee, a student, or any persons within a facility being aware of a hazardous situation, we must first sound an alarm. This alarm may come in the form of a police station, it may come in the form of a bell, it may come in the form of you shouting to people to know that there is some situation, some negative situation taking place at your facility at this time. And in that aspect, persons who are around you will also be aware, and they too can raise an alarm to ensure that everybody within this facility is aware of our situation and can then begin to evacuate or be aware that something is wrong. In emergency situations, we must delegate someone to call the fire service. In part of our planning process will be identifying a member of the administration. If it's a school, a member of the school staff, whether the principal, vice principal, or other members of the administration staff. Security in some business spaces where they have phones available at their booths, but somebody must call the fire service so that the emergency personnel can be informed that there's an emergency at your facility, and then put things in place to get there as quickly as possible so that you can limit the amount of fire loss, or to ensure that persons are not injured or there is no death in relation to this incident. Right? So we call the fire service and we use the number 990 for those who don't. While all of this is taking place, the evacuation would have already started based on the alarm going off, and this alarm must be something unique to this premises when nobody else can distinguish this bell or this sound with anything else. In schools, we recommend that you don't use the school bell because that person may feel as a change in a period, or don't use the lunch bell. We use a distinct sound for which once we hear this sound, there must be no doubt that an emergency is taking place and you act accordingly. So we start the evacuation process. So while we evacuate, we leave all our belongings behind. And the reason why we ask people to do this is because we are aware that you want to keep your belongings, you want to keep your bags, you want to keep your cell phones and everything in it. But especially for the ladies, you might just come home from or just come back to work from being on your lunch break where you probably purchase something during lunchtime, whatever the case may be, and leave them at your bag or your bags will become an issue when there's a mass of people evacuating at the same time. Your bag straps may become entangled in door handles, and this may cause some level of jerking when in a real life situation when you're trying to get out, where you can now possibly fall or call other people to fall. So in that aspect, we ask that we leave all our personal belongings behind, because in this situation, life is the most important aspect of anything. So life is priority. So we ask you to leave your belongings behind and leave by all available exits. All available exits. Human beings have a way of using the access route that they would normally use on a normal day. For instance, if I come in this building as I'm in right now, I may normally utilize the front door, and this is my natural progression to my space or my area of work. However, in an emergency situation, there may be an emergency exit 5 paces to my left. But because of my natural ability or my natural routine, I may utilize the same route that I come in, which may be 100 paces to get to the escape route. So in an emergency situation, you use all available access or egress areas to vacate the premises. Okay? So we evacuate. And where do we evacuate to? We evacuate to our assembly point or muster point. This point is an area that was identified based on our assessment again as an area safe or comparatively safe from the building. It must be an area directly away from the building. So in the event of a situation, any form of collapse, it must not collapse onto the muster point. In a fire situation, the heat, the smoke, the flames must not affect persons at the muster point. If there is a a release of a gas, the wind must not blow the gases to the muster point. So we always advise that the muster point be located in an area that we establish as being upwind. By the term upwind, we mean that the breeze is to our backs and the breeze is blowing everything towards the building. So anything happening at the building, the hot gases, the flames, the smoke, whatever other gases will not be blowing in the direction of the muster point, but be blowing away from the muster point. So everybody that's assembled at the muster point will be relatively safe. At the muster point now, we will then do a roll call, which is our accountability process by which we understand or we identify all the persons who were in the building. The purpose of this, again, is for accountability, is to ensure that no one was left behind. There must be somebody at this assembly point who will take charge and make sure that they can, or they are aware of the numbers of persons who are the muster point. So when the emergency personnel come, they can then give them the information as to no persons missing, all persons are accounted for. Or if someone is missing, who that person was and where most likely they would be, so that the emergency response personnel will then go into action, focusing on retrieving the person, because again, life is priority. After we have found and gotten that person out of that area, then we'll focus our attention on firefighting operations to save the rest of the building. But the first aspect of any emergency response will be for life, right? So at the roll call, we do this activity. If there's a small facility where the numbers are relatively limited, it will be easier to do that process. But for areas where there's large buildings, large businesses, schools, where there are hundreds of persons working there or being part of that facility, that process becomes a little more difficult. And therefore, we will come up with strategies as to how we can best do this activity in the quickest possible time and account for all persons there. So in large businesses, normally we do the accounting process or the roll call process by means of sections, departments, by floors, by cardinal points, by classes, if it's a school, right? So we all assemble at the muster point in our sections, which may be identified by means of a sign or some form of notification, and everybody assembles in their groupings, whereby the head of each group will take the roll call specific to them. They will have their own little roster as to all those who are part of the section, and they can account for the people within that section. This mini roster will then go towards the main roster, which is again the person directly responsible for the muster point, and all these figures are then calculated to ensure that everyone that's supposed to be at the muster point is there. Now, there are additional features that may be taking place as part of this evacuation plan. For large facilities, there may be additional delegated duties, right? There may be persons who we identify as fire wardens who will go through additional training so that persons can aid in firefighting, they can aid in first aid operations, or they can aid in clearing specific areas of the facility to ensure that no one was left behind, right? So for clearing of areas, these people or these fire wardens may be identified for, again, a flow. In an emergency situation, it is expected that that fire warden goes back to the floor while the evacuation process is taking place and make a sweep of that floor, whether it's the ground floor, the first floor, or whatever floor, whether it's a section or department, and make a sweep of that area to ensure that no one was left behind. They are to check in the bathrooms, the toilet areas, everything like that, to ensure that no one was left behind. And then they move to the muster point. There may be some fire wardens who do first aid operations. So in the event of the evacuation, if anyone was injured, if there was an explosion and anyone was injured, they can offer some minimum level of first aid to keep the person relatively in an okay condition while medical practitioners, ambulances, or emergency medical technicians arrive at the scene. So we have a pre-medical treatment until the more advanced medical people arrive, and then they can treat them and convey them to a medical facility for further treatment. Or there may be fire wardens again who are involved in other forms of training in terms of firefighting, whereby they can utilize their training to deal with fire situations at the incipient or early stages of a fire. So you utilize fire extinguishers that are available, you utilize the hose reels that are available, and again, you utilize these forms of equipment when the fire is at the smallest stages. It must not be in a situation where it is beyond the control of the fire warden. In fact, if the fire warden believes that the situation is overwhelming to them, they should not even attempt, they should just evacuate. But if they do choose to involve themselves in the firefighting operation based on their training, they must always position themselves between the fire and the door. So in case they run out of the extinguishing medium finishes, as in the cases of plenty or fire extinguishers, they would be able to evacuate the premises easily. So thank you again for this time. Thank you for the opportunity to give this presentation on behalf of GSAFE. And I hope that you all will understand that the emergency evacuation procedure is a very important aspect of our lives. Thank you.